How was that for y'all to retire at that earlier age than most people do?
It was different, having him home all the time. Yeah, he travels so much that I was already kind of used to him not being at home with all of us. But then when he was really home all the time, it was different.
This is the Loud Quiet Living the Empty Nest. Well, welcome back to the Loud Quiet. We have some special guests with us today. Many of you will recognize them. Some of you that don't know them. These are my parents, Phil and Bunny, also known as BB and Pop Pop. So we are very excited to have them on today and talk with them about empty nest as we can get some. We are just finishing our first year of being empty nesters. They have been empty nesters for a while now, so we can gain some wisdom, I think, from our elders today.
How do y'all feel about being called elders right off the bat? That's the way to introduce
It's a sign of
it's okay.
authority and that you are seeking wisdom from people who are older than you. Well, they have
you
to be
answered the
older
question
than
for
me.
them.
Yeah.
Well, I was trying not to. So anyways, yes, they do have 3 children. I am the middle of the 3. And I know the first question everyone will want to know is, who is the favorite? And I'll just answer that. It's me, because I birthed the first grandchild.
Yeah.
And then
right.
I don't care about the order. So, although I know what it would be.
It is kind of like the Olympics, right? You know, the gold.
I am the
but then
gold medal.
Silver's first loser, so, you know.
So anyways, that's a joke, of course. But,
Is it?
well,
I didn't get to hear their answer.
Well, she did
Well,
give
no,
you.
Mom
she
said
gave
it.
you an ornament one Christmas that said "Mom's favorite."
Well,
on it.
yes, but
However, your older brother and your younger brother also got
got
one.
one. Yes.
yeah, but we know that it's me.
Well,
because
you're even like denying that existed. Like that story your dad's telling is just no, no, it didn't happen.
it doesn't matter. I think you win if you have the first grandchild.
Oh my gosh, it's gonna be a spicy episode.
No. All joking aside, they do have 3 grandchildren, and they are very good grandparents and have very special relationships with each one of them. So,
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Thank y'all for being here today.
We're glad to be here.
are you? Are you sure?
I'm not sure. It's according to what questions I could ask.
Oh, just wait till we turn
Well,
the lights a little brighter.
Like, that was probably the hardest one. So,
Yeah.
you did fine.
One of the ones that I was thinking about when Clancy and I were first talking about y'all coming over and being a part of this episode is empty nest is this category now. Empty nest is this phrase. It's this brand. I mean, it's our empty
books
nesters,
about it.
books about it, all of that. Is that something that's new, or when y'all became empty nesters, did you actually realize that you were becoming empty nesters, or was it just, all right, we're just us?
I don't think we really thought about it. I think, but then we could do things that we wanted to do since we didn't have responsibilities for kids, and so we could, pick out things we wanted to do, and we usually did things together, like mission trips or
You're saying you did
volunteering.
things together, mission trips, like when you became this phase of life.
when we could go and do things, and volunteering. And so we still did things together, but we had friends, girlfriends, he had guy friends, that we did things with them too.
Yeah.
Yes, but the only reason I had guy friends is because of your girlfriends. Because
yeah.
probably otherwise I wouldn't have had that many friends.
That's okay. So with your friends, the friend group, like our friend group, we all talk about being empty nesters. Did y'all use that phrase, empty nest, or is that a phrase that has now come about in the past, probably 5-10 years?
Right. We've been empty nesters for 20 years, so I don't think we really thought about it.
I don't think that terminology was
yeah.
something that we actually utilized as such. I mean, that's what we were, but I don't think we said, "Oh, now we're empty nesters."
Right.
Now I don't know that we did. No.
Was it, and I realize it may be tricky to think back to that. So not just the label was there, was it sort of overlooked? Like, I feel like now there's a lot of attention placed on that category of life. And maybe it's just because, well, it's kind of like when you start buying a car, you see that car everywhere. Maybe now that I'm empty nester, I see that there's a focus on it. But was that sort of oh no, that phase of life, you don't have kids anymore, so was there sort of it just wasn't even an acknowledged category that you just sort of were supposed to fade away?
I don't think it was a category as such. I think that we talked about with our friends, what are we going to do with our time now that we have time to do things? And so, as Bunny said, we got to do more mission. We did some mission trips when the kids were at home with the kids, but then we get to do mission trips with our church as adult groups and so forth. And now we even do mission trips as senior adults.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just we had freedom, I guess, to do more things.
Yeah.
Well, at least that hasn't changed, because we've talked a lot about that freedom aspect of it. And so whether it's a category, a label, or whatever, maybe it's the freedom nest.
Yeah. No. Well, and so I was thinking about, when y'all talk about friends, Rick and I have always said that most of our friend groups came because of our children and the activities they were in. But I think y'all got your friends, and then we became friends with those kids, because where did y'all get most of your friend groups from?
From our church group.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're the long-lasting friendships.
Yes.
I mean, you have high school friends, you have college friends, work friends, but the ones that you have most in common with, I think, are your church friends.
And that are truly friendships that have lasted forever. I mean, we still have friends from when we lived in Lubbock, San Antonio, and here. So,
Yeah.
So why? Why do you think those relationships are lasting? Because Bunny, you said, and I'm not going to get the phrase exactly right, but you said when you have things in common. But you could make the argument that we had things in common with the parents of the kids' activities. That was common. But the moment that faded, the relationship faded. So why do y'all? Yeah, some. I don't mean all, but why do you think a relationship that has gone as far back as San Antonio, which we're talking about decades here, is still intact?
Well, I think when you have friends in church, you grow up together, you do things together with your kids, and you have Jesus Christ as your center. I mean, that's your common bond. And so I think they're the long-lasting friendships.
Yeah, in our life group Bible study a couple of weeks ago, I had several people in the class stand up, and I would say this person comes from this kind of background and did this kind of work and so forth. And I think I had about 15 of them stand up, and they were all different, completely different from where they had come from, different parts of the country, et cetera. And yet I said, so what do they all have in common? Jesus Christ.
Got it.
That's it.
So I can see how that faith brings y'all together. It's not. How long have y'all been at your current church?
32 years.
Has that played a part? I mean, I feel like I'm leading the witness, Your Honor, but when you've been at the same place for 32 years,
right?
Have those relationships, if you had to change locations in those last 32 years, would those relationships have maintained to the same degree that they are now?
I think some of them.
Yep. The ones in Lubbock and the ones in San Antonio have.
Still, yeah.
As you know, your mother has those 3 girlfriends in San Antonio that she's still very close to.
So what would you say, I'm going to ask you the first sort of real advice question. To an empty nester couple that doesn't have those relationships, doesn't have those friendships intact already, how should someone who's entered in this phase find that next group of friends? Or maybe you had said this earlier, have y'all found new friends since you've been in the empty nest, and if so, how?
Let me think.
Well, only through church. I mean, as we've acquired new relationships in church, people who've moved in and so forth. Yes, but beyond that, no.
Well, some of the activities that we do in church, you meet new, younger, not the same age, because you enter what is it called?
Interact.
Well, when you have people that are younger and then older, you still have a common bond, and you learn from them, and they learn from you. So you build friendships that way.
Intergenerational.
Yes, that's what I was trying to
talking
think
about.
about. Intergenerational.
Well, I know another subset of y'all's friends, and have always been, are, Dad's work friends. And, you retired at a younger age than most people do. You were 59,
60.
Right? 60, yeah. And so how retiring at that age, and I know y'all still do things with some of your
We do.
work friends. And those are some of the groups too that I remember growing up that we would do things with in San Antonio, and that kind of thing. So how was retiring at that earlier age than a lot of people do? How did y'all deal with that? And how did you deal with that? Him being home, and you were still,
I was still working.
somewhat. So how was that for y'all to retire at that earlier age than most people do?
It was different, having him home all the time.
Well, there's our intro line.
Yeah, it was. But we adjusted. I mean, he travels so much that I was already kind of used to him not being at home with all of us. But then when he was really home all the time, it was different.
If you aren't watching the video, just go watch those last 10 seconds. Her face tells you all you need to know.
It was different. But we worked it out, I did my
Are you
thing.
willing to talk about what that means, you worked it out? Like, was this an era of difficulty that y'all had to work through? Or what does that mean that you worked it out?
It's just different. When he would go to work at 6:30, I wouldn't see him until 6:30, and then for him to be home and trying to find something for him to do. And, it's hard to retire after you've worked for so many years. Then what do you do with your time?
Well, yeah. And I didn't even think about, yes, Dad traveled a lot when we were growing up, and even, after growing up.
Right.
How was that for you to just dead stop? You're home now all the time.
I think it was more difficult for y'all than it was for me, because it was like about 15 years I traveled a lot. And then all of a sudden I'm home, and y'all are like, who are you, and why are you messing up our schedule here? And
Yes.
so forth. But one of the things to stay connected to my friends and everything at work, I got involved with our JCPenney Alumni Association, and I led it for 5 years. And so we were involved with get-togethers and national conventions and things along that line that we were doing. So that helped us maintain that connection. And we made some, not the type of relationships we have through church, but we developed other relationships through that as well.
I want to. I think I'm coming back to you, Bunny, but I want to ask Phil right now this. We asked Bunny her perspective when you retired, but you have a perspective of coming back into the home, like as Bunny's talking about. What was that like? You've retired. How did you adjust?
Because at this point, the kids we were all gone, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so you've retired. That's what we've empty nested, but we haven't retired. So what was that like for you to go into that retirement mode?
It was challenging for a while, because I was still looking for deadlines to meet and so forth, and then I was asking the other person in the home, here, do this for me, like I was used to doing at work. Would you please do this for me? And she's like, can't you do that for yourself? So it was challenging.
It was
at
different.
times. It was different, but
Yeah.
So,
but we've made it 57 years.
Well,
so-
yes,
yeah,
and that's,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Did I mention that?
No, you didn't mention that, so
I know,
let's
I
stop
forgot
that.
to mention that. They just celebrated, 57 years of marriage, which is a monumental achievement for
yeah, you're
anyone
in
in
the
this
1%
day and age.
at that point,
So,
right?
yes.
Whatever the number is.
So they've obviously figured out a way to make it work.
Yeah, and that's what. So, okay, so you're used to, because you retired as an executive at a Fortune 50, at least Fortune 100 company, right?
Yes.
And so coming home into where it's not like that. were there moments where it was, let me not say it like that. Let me ask this. How did you realize you needed to make that shift, and then how did you make that shift?
That's difficult to explain. I think I was always looking for something else to do. I mean, I didn't have an agenda,
Yeah.
or a calendar as such. So I was always looking for what am I supposed to be doing? I should be doing something, and that was an adjustment. Not having meetings and so forth and so on going on. So it was just, I don't know. I kind of eventually made my way there, but it took a while.
And I think y'all did a very good job. I want to get into some of the things that y'all have done since you have been retired, empty nest. You know, I know y'all really got into traveling a lot. And so, tell us about some of the things and why. Because, I mean, we traveled as a family, but we didn't do the trips like y'all did, post-retirement. So, and empty nest. So tell us about some of the places y'all have been and how you got into wanting to really start traveling.
Well, one of the special trips that we took was to Israel, but we went with a church group. But it was also a mission trip because we worked in some clinics and visited churches, but we got to see Israel. And so that was a special trip for us. But then we've also done tours in Germany, Italy, and with friends. And we've done some cruises.
We've been to China, Hong Kong, Thailand. So we've gone to places we probably had never thought we would ever go to. Just because when Chad was living over in Thailand, we went there, and we would never necessarily have had that on our list of places to go. But we're so glad that we did.
And Chad is Clancy's older
Yes.
brother.
And that's opened us up to going to
Right,
some of those
that does.
places too, because some of the places he has lived, yes, we've gotten to visit, we've taken the kids. And so, yes, it's nice when, it's nice to have your children close, but it's nice when they live places that you can go.
Yeah, if
and
you're going to be
visit.
far, be somewhere cool.
Like Hong Kong.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
was great.
be Hong Kong, be Thailand, be that, absolutely. Was travel a part of y'all's world before the empty nest in a significant way?
Very little. I mean, we had some, mostly domestic type travel.
Yeah.
The fantastic trip to Borger, Texas. It's always it's a family favorite.
Well, we'll get some links to the Borger Travel Bureau. But so what changed? Like, was it just simply the freedom you talked about earlier, or what was it, or more concrete thought of we have to figure out something to do? Travel's that category.
Well, we had bucket list.
Before you went in the empty nest, or did y'all work?
I think so. I mean, I think we wanted to do, we just couldn't do it when we were working
Okay.
and had kids and stuff. So we had bucket lists that we wanted to do. National parks, we visited a lot
Yeah, we
of the
took a
national.
4,400-mile road trip once.
And
And y'all are still
planned-
together.
Yes, I know.
yeah. But yeah.
What about financial freedom? It probably, y'all, there probably was some of that when you weren't still paying for children in school, out of school.
Right.
And
No, tell us more, because we
Yes.
really want to know about that phase.
how do
all
we
the
get to
answers.
that?
Yeah. So I want to know what this financial freedom
Well,
was.
it's, you have more flexibility as to how to what you call discretionary income that you can spend however you would like to spend it, as opposed to what you have to spend it on, that type of thing. So yes, it does afford some of that, no doubt.
I'm still thinking about, like, I feel like there's something that I want y'all to tell us about, like how you got there, because it seems like this feels so natural that you just flipped into it. Was it really like that okay, we're just going to start traveling, okay, now we've found these activities to do, or was there a moment that y'all had the internal family retreat of this is how we're going to do empty nest together? How did that come about?
I don't think we had that planned out that much as such, but we had friends who traveled quite a bit because they had already retired and had told us about some of their travels and talked about some places to go, and that. So that's what we we said, well, that sounds kind of a neat place, like New Zealand. And Chad, we met him in New Zealand once, and places we, again, would not probably have thought about going to, but chose to go because of recommendations from friends.
Well, and sometimes our friends would say, we've been on several cruises with friends, and they would say, let's sit down and plan this. We did a fall foliage cruise out of New York, and then we went to Puerto Rico, and so it's a group thing again. They suggest it, then we all plan.
Yeah.
And
I think that is one thing that, yes, y'all's group and, especially the 4 San Antonio couples, definitely y'all plan stuff together. Then
Once a
you
year.
also have, your work friends, Susan and Pat here, that y'all have also traveled with as well. So, yes, I think a lot of that is just you find interests, and then
but you plan. You
plan,
do have to
yes.
plan. So,
It's not like doing a business plan, to me. It was not that. It was a lot more fluid, just kind of took it as it came and kind of went through with it.
I think that's something that I may be guilty of. Like when I think you use the word business plan, and what have I said to you? We need to have a corporate retreat type thing where we plan something. Now, some of that's because it's business related, but just even what do we want to do with our empty nest world? I think I still am guilty of that corporate mindset of, well, you have this deadline, you have this chart, you have this plan, and then it happens, as opposed to there's some of that intentionality, but there's also the just react and be fluid, I think is what you said.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about the activities that y'all got into? That's one thing that I've admired and am trying to use y'all as a role model, and Phil specifically just as to another man, watching the choices you've made of the activities that you have gotten involved in. How has that played a part in your empty nest, kind of even your mental state inside of empty nest? How did you choose the activities? How are you finding those? And how they help you enjoy the empty nest, suppose.
Well, one of the most fun activities, I guess several of them, have been with the grandkids, getting to get involved in what they're doing. And we had a tradition of when they turned 10 to let them choose a place to go on a trip. And so that was a really fun thing to do. And we've got wonderful memories of that. Hopefully they do as well. So, but I would say that's the type of activity. I mean, we play cards with our friends, and so those are activities. But following the kids and all they've done, the grandkids, it's really been a lot of fun.
that is one thing I think I do, because your grandkids live close or lived close to y'all, that y'all could be so involved in their activities. A lot of, I'm sure your friends too don't get to do that because their grandkids don't live
That's right.
in the same area. So, and I know they appreciate that. I mean, Tanner was mentioning the other day, he was looking at his New York book that you put together for him. So, that y'all took when y'all took him on his trip. And so, yes, I, as the parents of those children, yes, we appreciate every sporting event that y'all have come to. And
We enjoyed
we
those
loved it
10-year-old
too.
trips as well.
well, and we've brought that up on many of our
Yeah.
podcasts, that we were very blessed to have parents who were willing to take our children multiple times so that we could still cultivate our relationship. Y'all didn't have that. Y'all didn't live close,
Close enough.
and, and by the time your kids, your parents were gone. So, that is a very special thing, not only for them, but for us as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about non-family activities? Because what I was thinking of, I'm glad you brought up the grandkids. We may talk even more about the grandkids. But I was thinking about the chainsaw as one example. Not the chainsaw. I'll let you talk more about it. And Bunny, I know you've got a set of things that you still do to keep you busy. We hear all the studies about how your relationships and your activities have more an effect on your physical health later in life than things like smoking or eating even. So and Bunny, you start, Phil, you start,
Okay.
either way, but how did you choose, okay, these are the activities I'm going to get into and stick with them, and how has that affected you inside the Empty Nest?
Yeah. Well, I got involved about maybe 10 years ago with a group at church, Single Sisters Over 60. They're widows or never married, and those ladies are kind of left out. And so we started a group, and so once a month we meet, and we have about 40 ladies that come. We either go out to eat somewhere, we have a program, we do activities, we go to museums. And so that's once a month. And then we play cards on Monday night with senior adults. And that's an activity that I enjoy. I don't always win, but it's okay. It's just a game. That's
She
what I
likes
keep-
to she likes
I
to
like
play
to win.
cards, and
I
she
like to
likes to
win.
win.
And she's very competitive.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that is
very
a genetic
competitive.
trait that has been passed to her daughter.
Yeah. But then we do a mission trip once a year to Huntsville to work. It's like a prison ministry. And Phil and I can we do that together. He doesn't do the Single Sisters with me, but there are
Seems
other
reasonable.
things, there are other activities that we can do together.
Yeah.
And Texas Baptist Men, I was also involved in that, but I did childcare when there was a disaster.
Okay.
And so I could do childcare because I was a teacher, and so, yeah.
Yep.
So
The disaster relief team that it's now called Texas on Missions, but that they're involved in is anytime there's a disaster situation, and any might be in Texas, might be elsewhere in the country. Actually, we've gone to other parts of the world at times, but whenever there's a call out, I joined up with the chainsaw team to go in, and where there's trees down on tops of cars, on tops of houses, so forth and so on. And what a tremendous group of people, the camaraderie that exists in that group to help people, at the same time witness to them about Jesus as well. So those bonds have remained a long time as far. They've strengthened the relationships I have with some of our guys at our church and with other churches as well. So
And you also play pickleball now.
recently,
You've gotten
yeah.
on the pickleball craze. So
We're having a good time with that.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, played yesterday morning. So yeah.
y'all also do work at your, the church that y'all go to has a clothes closet.
forgot
and
Yes.
so y'all also, I mean, I think we can say the common theme here is church, which the church that y'all go to is different than churches that are more, what's the word, common, modern, I don't know, like the ones that we seek out.
Churches that have probably started in the last 2 decades
Yes.
tend to follow a different pattern
Right.
than churches
Yes.
that have been around for 50, 60, or hundreds.
And while they still do offer some of the things that y'all have discussed, it's not nearly, and I think it's interesting, y'all's age group is still tied to the church, whereas I think our age group and even younger than us, it's kind of in and out, and not as consistent, I think, as
Right.
And that's a whole different topic, right?
Right,
One,
but-
not even just faith, but just the mobility of younger generations as compared to other generations. Although I did hear a stat that it's like, I think 90% of America still lives 100 miles from where they grew up. So this theory of mobility isn't actually as real as I thought it was.
I want to speak to something you talked about a moment ago about socialization, that type of thing, being involved with people, because one of the major issues with people's health deterioration today is loneliness. It is a big, big problem. And so I think that's helped us maintain our health and everything, is being around people. We've had friends that have gone through some very difficult times, and they need people around them.
And that's really at the root of why I'm asking, because we have talked about it on the show. It's difficult, or it feels difficult, to build new friend relationships, build new activity relationships in the empty nest, because so much of our time was spent building relationship with parents of kids.
Right.
And while we've maintained relationship with some, we have not maintained relationships with all. And that's why hearing you talk about the charity involvement and the service involvement seems to be a gateway into relationships that wouldn't exist, or I shouldn't say wouldn't, a different gateway into relationships without relying on your kids' friends' parents.
Yep.
I want to go back to something that we started to talk about, and it was, you mentioned the grandkids. I want to talk about kind of the evolution into the empty nest is a change. It's a change as a couple. You have to connect as a couple. You have to find each other independent as yourselves as a couple rather than involving the kids. Then grandkids show up. And I don't know even a question to ask because thank God we aren't talking about grandkids
Oh,
between
Lord.
Clancy and me right now. Yeah, exactly. What was that shift like? Was that as dramatic as going into the empty nest? Did the grandkid relationship change how y'all operated together? What did that look like when grandkids showed up?
We enjoyed it. I mean, it was fun getting to build a relationship with each one of them. And I think sometimes that doesn't happen if you're too far away or whatever. But we enjoyed watching them grow up and being included in their activities. And
I've been a firm believer of the old adage that if I'd have known how great grandkids were, I'd have had them first.
Well, yeah, because
You can give them
you don't
back.
have to. You don't have to.
You
You
put
spoil
up
the
a little
crap
bit.
out of
Yeah,
them,
you
and
don't, and you don't have to put up with the crap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. We can send them back after we've had them a few days. Then we can send them back. Yeah.
Did y'all? This is going to be. We're hopefully in a safe place here. Let's be. Did you feel any pressure as the grandkids showed up? Did you wonder, am I going to be called upon to be the babysitting more often? Am I going to be called upon to be involved? Did you feel any
We
sort of?
relished it.
Yeah,
we relished it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, if you were to look back at how many times we had to say no, it was extremely rare.
I don't remember actually. If you want to know the truth, like we've talked about that was not a factor. The no was not there, but we didn't know what might have been going on inside the heads of.
No.
No.
No, the
Not
only
at all.
rule.
Tanner's been a real toot. I don't really want to hang on to him
Okay.
today.
The only rule I had was they could not come downstairs until it was 7:00 on the clock. Do not come to my bed and say I'm starving or whatever. It has to be 7:00 before you can come down.
Baby.
Yeah, so I know. Yeah, Tegan would stand. I'm starving.
Oh, well, yes. I don't know that we've talked about that on this show, but that child, and even someone commented the other day, we were in a restaurant and said, you can sure eat. For those of you who don't know Tegan, she weighs 97 pounds,
Yeah.
but the child eats like she weighs about 300 pounds
Yeah.
and has been that way since
And
she
works.
was little.
It's very athletic.
Yeah.
It's very
She
involved.
She
so,
can eat
yeah.
that way
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
yes. But
And it's interesting at our house, the first place they go, even when they were growing up, is the pantry to open the door and see, oh, you have this, and we don't have that at our house.
Which
Hey, I still go to y'all's
but
pantry and open it too. Though.
I-
Cereal.
But I
I've been
will
doing that
say,
before.
I was not restrictive
No.
with them.
I
I
know,
didn't,
I know.
but
Yeah.
there's always better treats at the grandparents' house
Yes.
than
Yeah.
there is at ours. But I even think about, because I know I can speak for our kids. I can't speak for your other grandkid, but they were never. I was almost a little scared sometimes of my grandparents, like just because I didn't know them and I didn't have the relationship that, and I remember I went one time by myself to Arkansas to be with both of them. And yeah, I was a little, didn't know how it was going to go. Wasn't, and I don't think our kids would even think
No.
that thought would not even pop into their head when they're, going over to y'all's house or going out to lunch with y'all. And so that's.
But I think it's different now. I mean, when you were growing up, our parents were not involved in a lot of stuff, and they seemed older.
Yes.
And we've tried to do activities with them that, I mean, it's just kind of different now.
Well, I
I don't
will
think
say,
our kids-
but-
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I will say though, y'all are different than a lot of grandparents, and Rick's mom was too until she got sick. Y'all have stayed active.
Yeah.
Y'all engage with them. Y'all don't act your age, which is what, I hope that we will be like that as well. Y'all don't act 79 and 70. It's just when I tell people y'all's ages and comparing them to some of their parents who are the same age, they just can't believe all the things that y'all still do. So
that's what I was going to say, is that y'all have always seemed younger to me than what I would have
We've
thought.
been very fortunate to not have any major health problems. So we've been able to do that. So
Yeah.
I looked over at the clock. We're running out of time here, but I want to do almost the cliche question. And I'm going to start with you, Bunny, and then you, Phil. And that is, if you were to offer one piece of advice to a couple going into the empty nest, what would that piece of advice be?
Well, find time for just the two of you to do things. We love movies, so we, try to go to a movie once a week if there's something good.
worth seeing. Yeah.
And doing things together, don't stop doing things together. Enjoying each other's company. We do puzzles together. And stay active. It's
All right.
I think she covered it all.
Nope.
Really. I don't think I can add anything.
Phil, what is one thing not already said
Yeah.
that you would offer to an empty nester?
Well, don't stop. Don't stop trying. Be creative, in what you do together, because that's something we've done. Well, let's try this. We've never done that before. We've zip lined down in Costa Rica. Who would have ever thought we would have gone zip lining? And say, well, let's just try that. Let's do it and see what happens.
I'm going to need to get some of that video, and so that we can insert that into the show, please.
Well,
thank.
You've been on a podcast now, so there.
Yes, yeah,
you
that's
can
it.
you can
Is
put
this
that
your
on
first
your
one?
list.
This is your first one, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
There you go.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
First time, you'll be on YouTube. You'll be all over the place.
Yeah.
Ah,
We'll
it's
be
gonna
famous.
Or infamous, whichever way you want.
Yeah.
Well, given what you shared with us today, I think it's going to be famous, not the infamous stuff. There's a lot of good stuff in there. One, just great stories. I know that I view y'all as a role model when it comes to living life, and then specifically living life inside the empty nest. It's certainly been a treat to watch and learn from y'all before, and then also to hear from y'all today.
No, I agree. I know what you wanted me to say to that, but yes, I concur.
I agree is a
I
good
concur.
answer. So, Phil, Bunny, thank y'all for being on The Loud Quiet.
Living the Empty Nest.